Chuck Norris was a big star in 1980s action films, and those acting abilities and martial arts skills made him a big name in Ceaușescu's Romania. The country leaned on bootlegged American movies dubbed over by an incredible woman as a form of protest against their authoritarian dictatorship and found hope in every kick, punch, and unnaturally large explosion that graced the silver screen. How exactly did Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Sylvester Stallone help Romania fight back against one of the biggest dictators of the 1980s? We'll tell you. You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you, Roxanne?
Well, it's the end of an era with Chuck Norris, being gone now. He king of the memes, and whatnot. I admit I was never really a fan because his movies were really aimed at my demographic. And when Walker, Texas Ranger was on, that's when I was finishing graduate school and moving out and getting married, so I had a lot more going on. But this was a fascinating, look into how all of, his movies and, like you said, Schwarzenegger and Stallone getting behind the Iron Curtain, really,
Yeah.
So it was a fascinating thing. I didn't even know this was a thing.
Right. And for our listeners, the documentary that we attempted to watch this week in honor of the late, great Chuck Norris is called Chuck Norris versus Communism. And the documentary itself is essentially the story of Irina Margarita Nistor, who was a government employee in 1980s Romania under Ceaușescu. And they came to her, some people who were kind of in this black market underground thing, and asked her if she would dub some Western movies because she was one of the few people that they knew spoke both English and Romanian. And she did it. She dubbed over 1,000 movies, and it was huge. Action stars, action movies from the U.S., from, Western media. And she single-handedly brought, watchable media to Romania, because up until that point, they had basically 3 hours a day of broadcast TV, and it was all government approved, watch the president give this speech.
I can't even begin to imagine. I mean, I always make jokes about how when I was a kid, we only had 5 TV channels and whatnot. But these people, literally, they had 2 channels. They only broadcast for 2 hours a day. And then eventually they stepped up 3 hours a day. Well, and it was nighttime, actually. It was like 7 to 10.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it was all propaganda. It was what the government wanted you to hear.
Yep. And this was 1985. And at that time, Nicolae Ceaușescu's communist regime was in its 20th year. Romanians were isolated culturally. They did not get media or information from outside of the country.
They didn't get it from Russia.
No, not even. Free speech and media were very strictly controlled, and people lived in fear of state surveillance.
Ugh.
And I think it's really important to point out that, yes, Ceaușescu was a communist dictator, but the thing that made him bad was not necessarily the communism, it was the dictator part.
Right.
The same way that we are now seeing today, the authoritarianism that is taking place, that is putting, government, ICE agents everywhere and all of that. The authoritarian part was the bad part. It was not the communism necessarily itself. But this whole situation, in doing this, they basically created forbidden fruit because they've now, all of the Romanians know TV exists, and they know, because there was a time before Ceaușescu was in power, so they know the West is producing movies and all of this. And so now they have these TVs and nothing coming through it. Had Ceaușescu put in place some type of broadcasting, fun Romanian TV, this may never have happened.
The concept of fun Romanian TV. I mean, because their lives were just so miserable. I mean, they had gymnastics, and that, and that was pretty much it.
Right.
That was the time of Mary Lou Retton and the big Romanian, the invasion from Bella Karolyi, all that. I'm battling. But sorry, listeners, I am a little under the weather. You will hear me hacking. Rachel will try to fix it in post, but okay, sometimes I'll just start hacking.
But yeah, this is the kind of thing where the dictators seem to forget that for bread and circuses to keep people entertained, they need both bread and circuses. So your people need to be fed and they need to be entertained. Mm-hmm. And then you have a lot more power.
Right.
Because
they are happy, they're easier to control.
So, but because he shut down everything, right, and people had nothing, they had no literature, no media, no movies, no anything from outside of their country, and nothing that even promoted like happy or entertainment or anything, any feeling other than loyalty to the government. Yeah. Of course, they were going to go seek it out someplace else. Of course, he created the perfect world for a black market underground media. Yeah. And so Irina and the people that she was working with stepped up to fill that void, and man, did they fill it.
Oh my God, yes.
And so one of the things that as these films started to be dubbed and brought into the country, it kind of became clear to the people in power that something was happening. And so they started bringing in, like, they brought the TV show Dallas in and showed it to Romanians in hopes that it would show them the corruption of capitalism.
Capitalism, and they picked Dallas. That's great.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're thinking.
I wasn't sure where their logic was going with that. I think they could have chosen better. But
also, I legitimately have never seen an episode of Dallas.
Neither have I.
It was on, like, when I was a tiny child, and by the time I was old enough to have watched it or participated in it, it was gone.
I had no interest in it. I really didn't. I never cared for, like, those megas, like Dallas and Falcon Crest and all of those, the late night soap operas is what they are. I mean, they're soap operas. Yeah, not a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, they point out in this documentary, in what we could see of it, because the problem we had is this documentary is not streaming anywhere in the U.S. There is no place to find it. We were able to find a little 15-minute kind of summary segment of it on YouTube, but every copy of this we could find was in Romanian.
With closed captions in Spanish, which did not help us at all.
Yeah, so we tried our best to watch this documentary, and we got a fair amount of it.
We did. I think we understood a lot more than we thought we were going to understand.
But it was so difficult to find. And at one point we were like, okay, we've seen this, but we should also watch an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. Just so that we have some Chuck Norris things to talk about.
I had never seen Walker, Texas Ranger at all, and you had seen one episode.
Yeah. Right. So we definitely got some Chuck Norris in our evening.
It was a Chuck Norris-y night.
And I mean, Chuck Norris, I actually met the man when
I love this story. Go ahead.
When I was in high school, I worked at a movie theater as a concession stand person. I sold popcorn and candy and stuff. And it was in Texas.
Right.
And he was filming Walker, Texas Ranger, and I'm pretty sure they filmed it in Texas, at least most of it. And he came through my line and he bought popcorn from me.
That's so cool.
He was such a nice guy.
Dressed as Walker? Like, what?
Well, I mean, he didn't have the cowboy hat or anything. No. Chuck Norris was an easily identifiable dude.
Yeah.
He did not, like, blend.
No.
So,
yeah.
And he was a very local celebrity for us. We all were very aware that Chuck Norris lived kind of in the general area.
He's from Texas.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
And at least at that time, he was in Texas, and we were very aware that that's where he was. And so I got to interact with him, and I did not, like, fangirl, and I did not say anything. I just sold him his popcorn, for which I'm sure he was very grateful to have people treat him like a person.
What did he order? Do you remember?
He just got a popcorn. Okay. I don't even remember if he got a drink or not. I remember specifically the popcorn part of it. But yeah, so He is the very first celebrity I ever had like a brush with. And later on, when I moved to like New York City, I ran into David Hyde Pierce, and I ran into like I met other celebrities.
You kind of expect that more in New York City. You turn left and there may be a celebrity. You don't expect that when you're at your minimum wage high school job, slinging popcorn at the Rialto or whatever for Chuck Norris to show up in your line.
Yeah. So that was a very fun experience. And so when I had heard earlier this week, or maybe late last week, that he passed away, I was sad. And I mean, politically, Chuck Norris and I are on very different ends of this spectrum.
Yep.
He's very, very conservative, and I am very, very not. But every experience that I ever had with him was a good one. I never ran into him saying crazy crap.
You never got in your face about it.
Right.
All we really ask at the end of the day is don't get in my face about it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, people in America are going to have different political opinions than I do, and I'm going to have different political opinions than they do. And we can be on different ends of the spectrum, and that can be fine as long as you're not a jerk about it to other people. And as far as I ever saw or interacted with, he was not. And I'm sure there are people out there who have horror stories about Chuck Norris. I'm sure, that's out there. But for me, because I never interacted with any of that, I was a little bit sad to see him go.
I was too. He was larger than life. I mean, that was certainly, part of it and whatnot. So if you have a Chuck Norris interaction story, tell us about it in the comments. We absolutely want to know. Positive, negative, neutral.
Yeah,
we'd
please
love to hear about that.
Tell us about Chuck Norris, and if you have a favorite Chuck Norris joke. Because that was the big cultural zeitgeist of Chuck Norris was that, when Chuck Norris goes swimming, he doesn't get wet, the water gets Chuck Norris. Like that sort of thing. So if you have a favorite one of those, please share that in the comments with us too, because we love that. But his bigger than life persona was a big part of what made him so easily adaptable to the Romanian underground.
Mm-hmm.
Because they wanted huge Western stars. They wanted people who showed the hero's journey. They wanted people who were big and muscular and looked like they fought for something. They really latched on to action movies from the West.
The shitty lives that they had. They were, we kept watching these scenes of like these 20 like sad, dirt poor Romanian people clustered around a little black and white TV, watching Rocky and Rambo and all this stuff. And I'm like, we must seem so weird to them. Like, because that's all the exposure they have to the West. I'm sure that, the way that we've been talked about and whatnot is we are nothing like what they think. Whatever it is, we could not possibly live up to that. They probably think we're all Chuck Norris over here.
Well, it's strange because when I was in middle school, one of my very good friends was a Romanian immigrant. She and her family had immigrated from Romania probably shortly after this period.
Mm-hmm.
They came to the United States and they lived here, and it was really interesting to see the cultural differences. But they acclimated so quickly to American fashion and American.
Did they stay in America?
Oh yeah,
as far
as far as I know, they're still here. I haven't followed up with them in a very long time, and the girl who I was friends with was so incredibly uniquely beautiful.
Mm.
Like at this point, I would not be shocked if she were a model or something. Like was just gorgeous, and she had this lovely accent, and she
was Eastern European. She had the cheekbones, she had the forehead,
Yeah, so she was lovely and kind and wonderful and beautiful, and like I am so glad that their family escaped this to come here. Even though now we're kind of spinning it back around the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was so interesting to see. And what I thought was fascinating was Irina, the woman who did the dubbing, did the voice of every character in the movie. She literally just did the dialogue for all of the things because she was the only one. She had to be the one who did all of it. And so these people would watch Rambo
Right.
or whatever, and it would be this lovely woman
Right,
from Romania kind of doing the I'm here to kill you with my machine
Oh my
gun kind of thing.
so funny.
Oh my goodness.
That's real, It's just
And one of the things they talked about was this type of bootleg media situation gave them an excuse to gather together, which gave them the ability to come together as a group and plan and try to work together to kind of overthrow this larger political situation, which I thought was really fascinating to use this bootleg movie situation as a political revolution tool. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And and then of course we watched an episode of Walker Texas Ranger together. And it was the very first episode in fact.
Yeah. It's the only one we found that had a direct financial anything, because there was a bank robbery and hiding of money and trafficking money and people across country lines, and it's a very big deal, and it was the most 90s Chuck Norris. Like,
it was great, and I had so much fun explaining it to your kid, who was like, "But this isn't even funny. Like, you don't understand." In the 1993 was this episode of Walker that we watched. And we were like, all right, because this episode's a little different because you got to get the backstory, you got to get Walker's backstory and how he ended up where he was and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, there was no streaming back then. There was no binge watching of Walker, Texas Ranger. You had to wait 7 days to see what would happen. And, shows back then were written with the idea in mind that people were going to jump in and out of it. It's like,
well, and I was shocked, absolutely shocked by how progressive Walker Texas Ranger was.
Sure.
I mean, yes, Chuck Norris drove across the country lines into Mexico and kicked 4 people in the face and chained them up in the back of the truck and then trafficked them back
into the United States.
Yeah, I mean,
like so many felonies.
Yeah,
the border agent knows him by name, doesn't even look at the IDs of all the unconscious people Walker's got in the bed of his truck. Oh my God.
So, I mean, there was some of that. But for his partner to be a young, sexy black dude, and for him to have been raised by a Native American tribal elder, and they really brought in some stuff and caring for, in the very first episode, he takes in to his own property a family of Ukrainian circus performers.
Right.
And they cook for him, and they're having this
because of course they do. Yeah.
And they're having this cultural exchange of ideas and talking about all their things and their history. And I'm watching this and thinking, this was a conservative show for the 90s, air quotes. But by today's standards, that is very progressive.
Yeah.
I don't think Chuck Norris of 2022 or 2023 would have been cool with some of that stuff that he was cool with in 1993, simply because the Overton window has shifted so far.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. And even within that very first episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, they brought in characters from that Eastern European.
Yeah.
They weren't Romanian, but they were, neighbors.
Right, right.
And I just thought that was so fascinating. And at one point there was a character who popped up, and Roxanne and I looked at each other and we were like, is that Yakov Smirnoff?
Was it?
No, it was not. He was an actor named Eli something. Yes. Oh, sorry. His name was Elia Baskin. He is apparently a very famous character actor. He's been in 120 movies and TV shows. And I went and I looked him up on IMDb. Incredible dude, but he just had the curly hair on his face shape and the accent, and so he just had this kind of. Did they really bring Yakov Smirnoff onto Walker? No, they didn't.
Okay.
And the plot point of this first episode, besides there's bank robbery, is that everyone in Texas but Walker Texas Ranger is a criminal.
Yeah.
Of course. They all wear sunglasses and they all want to blow up everything.
Oh my God.
And it was just so weird. And then the circus performers, these criminals hurt the 16-year-old trapeze artist who travels with these circus performers.
Lisa. Right.
And so he's protecting this girl from these bad people, and they are, popped collar sunglasses bad guys of the 1990s.
Right.
It was, if you wanted a fun popcorn watch with no underlying plot that you had to be really focused on, this was a great show.
Oh, it absolutely was. You could, even after watching only one episode, all right, well, in every episode, we know it's going to eventually end with Chuck Norris kicking someone in the face. There's going to be the big fight scene at the end of every episode. And this is what I was saying to the kid last night, at the end, Walker will always win. There will never be an episode where Walker doesn't win. And if there is, that guy's going to come back in the season finale and then Walker will win.
Yeah.
Because he is the hero of his name is the name of the show. He's the hero. He will always win.
Yeah, that is so light and fun despite having very serious undertones.
Mm-hmm.
And they hit every stereotype. The retired cop who's now writing the newspapers.
What was he writing? A love and advice column. Yes, that's great.
They had the young partner who's very hip and modern with using computers to do things.
Yeah.
While Walker is going to throw on his denim jacket and his cowboy hat, and he's going to go research the old-fashioned way.
Right.
By roughing people up in the bar and whatnot.
Right, exactly. By going to the library and using the car catalog?
No.
That's Doc Walker. Yeah, and you had the wise old Native American man, telling Walker to say hello to the sun every day.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I don't know, I'm sure Walker, Texas Ranger came after the whole situation in Romania, but I can imagine the Romanians wanting to gather around to watch Walker every week, every time they got access to a bootleg tape.
Right.
If that had been available at that time, they would have lost their minds.
Yeah.
And the idea of law enforcement working to protect the people probably would have been pretty shocking. And the idea of, he's protecting these people, taking them on and taking personal responsibility for their lives, that probably would have played really big in 1985 Romania.
Yeah.
And so it was such fun to watch this little bit of this documentary, to watch Walker, Texas Ranger. And the whole time I was watching, I kept pulling back from my mind. I was like, oh my God, I remember this about Romania, and I remember this about Ceauceescu. And I don't know, have you ever read or seen the documentary Freakonomics?
I have not.
So that's one we will touch at some point.
Okay.
But there is a section of Freakonomics, the book, and they turned it into part of the documentary, that uses comparisons between the U.S. and Ceaucescu's Romania to explain why women having the right to have an abortion has reduced crime rates. And because one of the very first things Ceaucescu did is when he took power was he took away the right to have an abortion.
Of course.
Everybody, abortion was now illegal. And the United States, as he was doing that, United States was gaining that right in the late 60s.
Right. 70s. Right.
And so as we see, okay, nothing in these places has changed besides the change in abortion legality. Crime in Romania steadily went up. It went up, and it went up, and it went up.
All crime? Across the board?
Literally all crime 15 years after that change had taken place. And in the United States, 15 years after we gave women the right to have an abortion, crime started to fall. And so as you watch this, they made a solid, compelling argument that the people who were committing crimes were the unwanted kids who nobody could afford, who had their mother had the opportunity to not do that. They would not be here committing this crime.
Right.
And so it is I really would love for you to sit down and read this or watch it. It was fascinating. And there's a lot more that goes into crime levels, obviously. A big part of the drop in crime rate in the United States was the removal of lead from gasoline. Because people are no longer being poisoned. Your brain is no longer...
Exactly.
And one of the things that happens when you're exposed to a lot of lead is it makes you angry and aggressive. And so, there's a lot of factors at play. But the Freakonomics explanation that, banning abortion, banning sex education, making this, no birth control, not that thing.
Abstinence only.
Right, abstinence only turns into crime later, because now you have this huge population of people who weren't wanted, who can't, and nobody can afford for them to be there. They can't, it's hard to feed them, it's hard to educate them. They have nothing but anger.
Right.
And so, of course, they're going to be committing crimes. And the opposite then is true, that women in the United States who had the opportunity to not have a child in a situation where they couldn't afford it, in a situation where they didn't want it, were not bringing these children into the world.
Well, and not to mention that the women were able to stay in school, finish their own education, get their own degree, and go into the workforce and be a contributive member of society as well. So it worked out on both ends.
And they've done studies that have shown that women in the U.S., at least, I don't know if they've done these other places, who have an abortion usually later go on to have other children. So
that is the case in the 3 women that I know who have had past abortions.
Yeah.
And very much wanted and well-developed children. Yeah.
Yes. And I can tell you, I mean, I have never had an abortion, but waiting until I was in 29 to have a child, my child is so loved and so wanted. And I had my tubes tied so that she was my own son. And that means I have more money to spend on her. I have more time to spend on her. I have more ability to focus on her and make sure her life is good. I don't have to spread this out across 5 or 6 kids because I was not given the opportunity to choose my own way. It makes really solid logical sense. And so Ceaușescu's Romania was a solid example of what happens when you take away those rights from people. And that's just one example of one right or one set of rights that were taken away from people. And it kind of made things significantly worse for the people of Romania and the Romanian government as a whole. And so that's the kind of thing that I would really love to see Americans talking about as we are promoting, a woman's right to choose and the benefits that come with that is, we have some amount of evidence that indicates that it reduces crime, which is a huge right-wing talking point.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want less crime, giving women access to birth control and abortion and the ability to plan their own, families and all of that.
That's the key statement. I think they're the ability to plan their own families. But again, the lawmakers are men. And they're wealthy men, and they're wealthy white men who can afford to have as many kids as they want, if they even know how many kids, they want. Since, certainly Ceaușescu's, Romania, it was entirely a boys' club. There were no women making any policy. Of course not.
And in fact, I will put a link to a little description of that. It's chapter 4 of Freakonomics. I'll put a link to that in the description of the episode. And so, as we look at how Chuck Norris and these other big action stars kind of gave hope to the people of Romania, I think it's interesting to see, I am so concerned that the things that we are running into now, hopelessness is going to become a problem. And you don't fight back if you don't have hope.
Absolutely not.
And so the people of Romania were pushed back and fought back in large part because they had hope. They were being smuggled hope in the form of VHS tapes.
Yes, exactly.
Over the course of, a decade. And I think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely. I agree.
And so, yeah, as much as I disagree with Chuck Norris about a lot of things, I think he was super fun to watch.
Oh,
I think he was probably a net good as far as the performance.
And you could tell he was having a good time.
Yeah.
Taking himself too seriously and and it was just like that wonderful was, a whole eventually going to be a buddy cop kind of thing where Walker starts to, more grudgingly start to respect, the new generation, his new partner, Trevette, was his?
Yeah, Trevette.
and also, I mean, I'm assuming later also Trevette starts to respect Walker's like older ways more, and so they start learning from each other. This is gonna be a beautiful thing, man. It just is. Like,
Yeah, so I thought that was such a fun little watch. I thought the bit of the documentary that we got to see was so interesting. And this is one that I'm actually going to put a flag on to see when it becomes available in English to me in the future.
Know this, listener. If you know this, put a link, put some direction in here, because we loved what we saw of it, and certainly watching it, next to an episode of Walker Texas Ranger was very helpful. But I'd love to sit down and watch the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I would love to find out more about the whole process and how they were able to smuggle these things and kind of how they got them into the hands of the people. I feel like I want to know all the things about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to be watching for the full length version of this in English so that I can understand it, or at least with English captions. You just need to change the audio. If you just add English captions, that's all I'm looking for. But yeah, very exciting, and I feel like a fitting goodbye to Chuck Norris.
Rest in peace. You've earned your rest.
Yeah. And I think I posted it on Facebook, and I think I was appropriate in my saying, I don't think Chuck Norris died. I think heaven got Chuck Norris.
Oh, that's great.
But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachael and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the concept of political revolution and Chuck Norris versus communism. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.